Fear and anxiety seem to be a part of life, don't they? But what if I told you there's a secret hidden in one of the Bible's most powerful psalms that can completely transform your approach to fear? A secret that doesn't just help you cope with anxiety, but actually helps you overcome it, no matter how big or small the problem seems. Psalm 27 holds a promise, one that can shift your entire perspective on fear and bring peace into the chaos of your mind. It's not about pretending fear doesn't exist, but about discovering a deeper, more powerful way to respond. Let's dive in and uncover God's timeless secret to finding strength and peace, no matter what you're facing. Fear. It's that feeling that grips you when you least expect it, paralyzing your mind and body. Have you ever experienced it? That moment when your thoughts spiral into a dark abyss and you feel overwhelmed by uncertainty. Well, the Bible offers a promise that can transform how we deal with fear. Psalm 27 speaks directly to this universal struggle. It reminds us that in the face of fear, God is our light and salvation, offering an unshakable refuge. That is a promise you can hold on to. Imagine standing in the middle of a storm. It feels as though the winds are howling, the rain is blinding, and the thunder is deafening. Yet, in the midst of it all, you find peace, knowing that God's light shines brightly around you. That's what Psalm 27 teaches us. It's not the absence of fear that brings peace. It's knowing that God, through His divine promise, will always be there to guide you through the darkness. It's in those moments that we must cling to His truth and not our emotions. So how can you apply this promise to your life? It's simple, really. Every time fear rears its ugly head, remind yourself that God's presence is greater than any fear. Begin by praying. Ask God to reveal His peace to you and trust that He is your light and salvation. As you declare these truths over your life, you'll feel the weight of fear lifting, replaced by the comforting embrace of God's love. The beauty of Psalm 27 is that it doesn't promise an absence of challenges or fear. Instead, it promises that we won't face them alone. You'll always have the support of the Creator who designed you to overcome. And that's the foundation of faith, knowing that no matter what you face, God has already overcome it. He is your shield, and His promise never fails. This is a call to live with confidence, rooted in the knowledge that fear doesn't have the final say. Instead, God's light and salvation are the keys to overcoming whatever fear tries to hold you back from achieving. Let the promise of Psalm 27 wash over you today and transform how you approach life's fears. But don't stop there. Let's dive deeper into David's example to understand how we can walk with this confidence. David's confidence in God is something extraordinary to behold. When you read about his life, you can't help but admire his unwavering trust in God's protection. Here was a man who, as a young boy, faced a giant, literally, and yet he never wavered. His confidence wasn't rooted in his own strength, but in his deep relationship with God. When facing overwhelming odds, David knew that with God by his side, anything was possible. And that confidence is something you and I can draw from today. Let's think about the battles David fought. Not just the ones with giants, but also the ones with betrayal, threats, and personal heartache. It wasn't an easy road. Still, through it all, he turned to God, praying with sincerity, trusting in divine guidance. When you face your own giants, it's essential to remember that you don't have to fight alone. God was David's source of strength, and that same power is available to you when you call upon Him. How did David manage to remain so confident in the face of such immense challenges? It wasn't blind hope. It was a relationship built over years of intimacy with God. David spent time in God's presence, cultivating a trust that was unshakable. He knew that God would never leave him, no matter how dire the circumstances. And just like David, you can experience that same closeness. Spend time in prayer, seek God's guidance daily, and you'll begin to see your own confidence rise as you witness His hand at work in your life. David's story encourages us to focus on the strength of our relationship with God, rather than the size of the problem in front of us. It's easy to become consumed by the challenges that seem insurmountable. But when you remind yourself of the countless promises in the Bible, like God's promise to be your shield and your fortress, you start to walk in a different kind of confidence, one that is not rooted in circumstances, but in the character of the God who holds your future. The key takeaway here is that confidence comes from intimacy with God. The more time you spend in His presence, the more you'll understand that His power is greater than anything you'll ever face. This confidence allows you to stand firm, no matter what storms come your way. But let's dive even deeper and explore how this confidence in God leads us to a place of intimacy that strengthens our faith. David's confidence wasn't just a product of knowing God's promises. It came from an intimate relationship with Him. When you read the Psalms, it's clear that David didn't see God as distant or detached. He saw God as his closest companion, someone he could talk to, trust, and rely on in every moment. Intimacy with God is the foundation of a strong, confident faith. Just like David, you're invited into this deep connection where God's presence surrounds you and His voice becomes a guiding force in your life. Think about a close friend, someone you've known for years. You don't have to explain yourself or put up walls because trust and understanding have already been established. This is how David saw his relationship with God. It wasn't built on occasional prayers or distant reverence. It was built on consistent, honest conversations, on expressing his heart and trusting God with his fears, doubts, and dreams. You too can cultivate that kind of relationship with God. It's not about perfection. It's about openness and time spent together. When you develop intimacy with God, your confidence begins to shift. It's no longer about self-reliance. It's about leaning into the one who knows you better than anyone else. Psalm 27 beautifully illustrates this. David declares that the Lord is his light, his salvation, and his stronghold. These aren't just words, they're a reflection of a deep, personal trust that David had cultivated over years of seeking God's presence. And as you spend more time with God, you'll start to recognize His guiding presence in your own life, turning ordinary moments into powerful experiences. But here's the thing. Intimacy requires intentionality. You can't expect to build a deep relationship with God without putting in the effort. It's like any friendship, it takes time and energy. This could mean setting aside moments each day for prayer, reading the Bible, or simply listening for God's voice. These small actions create space for God to reveal Himself to you. The more time you invest, the more you'll realize that His presence is not just a feeling, but a constant reality that empowers you to face life's challenges with confidence. As you continue to nurture this intimacy, you'll find yourself not only knowing God's promises, but truly living in them. You'll move beyond intellectual understanding into a deeper revelation of His goodness, His protection, and His faithfulness. And from this place of intimacy, you can draw strength and courage in every situation. But how do you move from mere belief to trusting God with everything? Let's explore how to face fear with unwavering faith. When fear grips you, it can feel like everything is falling apart. You might wonder how to overcome it, especially when it seems bigger than anything you've ever faced. But here's the truth. Facing fear with faith isn't about ignoring the fear or pretending it's not there. It's about choosing to trust in something greater than the fear itself. When you face fear, don't focus on the size of the problem. Instead, focus on the greatness of God. The Bible is filled with promises that remind us God is bigger than anything that scares us. David understood this principle deeply. As he faced giants, enemies, and betrayal, he didn't focus on his circumstances. He focused on the God who promised to deliver him. This shift in focus is crucial. When you're caught in the cycle of fear, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. But when you remember that God is in control, your perspective changes. The size of your problem suddenly shrinks when compared to the majesty of the Creator. So the next time fear comes knocking, take a moment to remind yourself that the God who parted the Red Sea is on your side. Faith is an active choice, not a passive one. It's not just about praying once and hoping for the best. It's about consistently declaring God's promises over your life. Think about a time when you've stood firm in faith, despite circumstances that told you otherwise. That's the kind of faith that can move mountains. Declare His promises out loud, over and over again, until they take root in your heart. When you stand firm in faith, fear loses its grip because you've chosen to trust in God's ability to handle what you cannot. What would your life look like if you faced fear with this kind of unwavering faith? What would change if you chose to view challenges as opportunities for God's power to be displayed? Faith isn't about avoiding fear. It's about trusting in God's ability to overcome it. So next time fear comes calling, let it remind you of God's greatness. Focus on His power, and watch how your faith grows stronger in the process. The truth is, facing fear with faith is one of the most powerful tools in your spiritual toolkit. It's not a one-time fix, it's a lifestyle. So, how do you begin? You can start by taking small steps. Seek God's presence daily, declare His promises, and trust in His ability to carry you through. But once you begin to do this, you'll realize that fear isn't as powerful as you once thought. It's time to explore how you can take practical steps to overcome fear. Overcoming fear isn't something that happens overnight. It's a process, one that requires intentional effort and commitment. But fear doesn't have to control your life. By taking the right steps, you can turn fear into faith. The first step? Seek God's presence daily. Imagine starting your day with a few quiet moments, inviting God to be with you, asking for His guidance, and setting the tone for the day. The more you seek God's presence, the more you'll feel His peace and security, which are the antidotes to fear. The second step is to declare God's promises with conviction. This isn't just a passive wish. It's about standing firm in what God has spoken over your life. Whether it's quoting scriptures like, "The Lord is my light and salvation," Psalm 27 verse 1, or "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me," Philippians 4:13. Declaring these promises out loud shifts your focus. Fear wants to keep you silent, but when you speak out God's promises, you're reminding yourself and the enemy that God's word has power. The third step is patience and courage. Overcoming fear isn't a one-and-done moment. It's a journey that requires both patience and courage. There will be moments when fear seems overwhelming, but it's in these moments that you must choose courage. Patience isn't about waiting passively. It's about trusting God's timing and knowing that He's at work, even when you don't see immediate results. Just like David faced numerous battles, you too will encounter challenges. But in the waiting, God is shaping you. Now here's where the rubber meets the road. These steps aren't just about theory, they're practical. So, start small. Dedicate a few minutes each morning to prayer. Speak out loud the promises of God. And when fear rises, remind yourself that God is bigger. Trust that the Holy Spirit is with you, strengthening your resolve and giving you the courage to press forward. Over time, these small steps will begin to add up, transforming fear into unwavering faith. Remember, overcoming fear is a daily commitment. These steps aren't a quick fix, they're habits that, when practiced consistently, will lead to lasting change. And as you walk this path, you'll notice how fear begins to lose its power over your life. But let's not stop there. God's protection is another essential element to overcoming fear. Let's look at how trusting in God's protection can provide the peace and security you need in times of uncertainty. When life gets tough and fear seems overwhelming, one of the greatest sources of comfort is knowing that God's protection is unwavering. It's easy to feel exposed and vulnerable when facing the unknown, but the Bible makes it clear that God is our refuge and fortress. Psalm 27 reminds us that the Lord is not only our light and salvation, but also our stronghold. His protection surrounds us like a shield, providing security even in the most difficult circumstances. Trusting in God's protection is a game changer for anyone battling fear. Imagine this. You're walking down a dark street at night and it feels unsafe. But suddenly, someone you trust comes alongside you, offering their protection and assurance. With that person by your side, the fear begins to subside because you know you're safe. This is what it's like when you trust in God's protection. He walks beside you through the darkest valleys, and His presence brings peace in the midst of chaos. The more you focus on His protective nature, the more you'll experience that peace firsthand. But it's not just about physical protection, it's also about emotional and spiritual security. When we face tough times, we often feel emotionally exposed, as if our vulnerabilities are on display for all to see. However, God's protection goes beyond the external. He guards our hearts, minds, and spirits. In the midst of emotional turmoil, God offers a safe place where we can rest. His promises are like a blanket of peace that covers us, even when the storms of life rage around us. Faith plays a crucial role in experiencing this protection. It's easy to doubt when everything around you seems uncertain, But faith anchors you to the truth that God is with you. Just like David trusted that God would protect him from his enemies, you can trust that God will protect you in every situation. His protection isn't just a future promise, it's a present reality. Trusting in his protection is a conscious decision to rely on him, not on your own strength. In moments when fear rises, remind yourself that God's protection is a constant in your life. It doesn't change based on your circumstances. It's there in the calm and the storm. It's easy to overlook this, but when you truly embrace God's protective nature, fear begins to lose its power. And as you continue to trust in God's protection, you'll find that fear no longer controls your thoughts or actions. Now let's dive into how prayer can strengthen your faith and help transform fear into courage. When fear looms large and your strength feels small, prayer is the bridge that connects your heart to God's infinite power. Prayer is more than just asking for help. It's a conversation with the Creator, an opportunity to align your heart with His will. In times of fear, prayer becomes the source of courage. When you pray, you're not just speaking words, you're acknowledging God's presence and inviting His strength to fill you. It's a powerful reminder that you don't have to face fear alone. A simple but powerful prayer might sound like this: God, I bring my fears before you today. I trust in your promises and your protection. Strengthen me, Lord, with the courage I need to face whatever lies ahead. Turn my fear into faith and my anxiety into peace. This prayer is a declaration, not just a request. You're reminding yourself and the enemy that you serve a God who is greater than anything that can make you afraid. And in those moments, you might feel a shift, a deep, unexplainable peace that fills your heart, knowing that God is on your side. One of the most transformative things about prayer is how it draws you into closer intimacy with God. It's in the quiet moments of prayer that you begin to hear His voice more clearly. You start to understand that He is always with you, ready to give you the strength you need. Prayer isn't about convincing God to act. It's about aligning your heart with His will and trusting that His plans for you are filled with hope and purpose. When you pray, you open the door for God to work in ways you can't even imagine. Praying for strength isn't just a one-time event, it's a daily practice. When fear rises, don't hesitate to pray. Call on God's name and remind yourself that He is your refuge and fortress. Through prayer, you can find the courage to take the next step, even when you don't know where the road leads. And remember, God's strength doesn't just empower you to face the present, it also equips you for the future, giving you the resilience to face whatever challenges lie ahead. Prayer is the foundation upon which courage is built. It's the fuel that keeps your faith strong and your heart steady. As you pray for strength, you're not just asking for immediate relief, you're developing a deeper relationship with God. And in this relationship, you'll find that fear no longer has the same grip on you. So the next time you feel overwhelmed, turn to prayer. Let it be the first thing you do, and watch how it transforms your perspective. But now, let's talk about David's courage and how we can apply his lessons to our own lives. David's courage is one of the most powerful examples in the Bible, and it offers valuable lessons for anyone facing fear. Courage, according to David, is not the absence of fear, it's the deep-rooted certainty that God is with you no matter what. David didn't face Goliath because he was fearless. In fact, the giant was terrifying, but David faced him because he knew that God had been faithful to him in the past and would be faithful again. His courage came from his unwavering trust in God's power, not his own. You see, courage isn't about pretending that fear doesn't exist. It's about taking action despite fear, knowing that God is standing beside you, ready to fight for you. It's like walking into a storm with the confidence that an umbrella is going to keep you dry, even when you can't see it protecting you. When David stood before Goliath, he wasn't thinking about his own strength or the size of the giant. He was thinking about the greatness of his God. He understood that God's power far outweighed any fear. In your life, there will be moments when you feel as though the challenges ahead are too much to handle. You'll feel small and insignificant, just like David facing Goliath. But here's the thing, courage doesn't mean you have all the answers. It means that you take the next step in faith, trusting that God will provide what you need. Just like David, you can face the giants in your life, whether they're financial struggles, health problems, or personal doubts, because God is with you. David's courage was also rooted in his intimate relationship with God. The more he knew God, the more he trusted him. The more he experienced God's faithfulness, the more confident he became in God's ability to protect and provide. This relationship was built over time through prayer, worship, and remembering God's past victories. It's the same for you. The more time you spend in God's presence, the stronger your confidence in Him will become. And that confidence will fuel your courage when fear tries to take hold. So the key lesson from David's courage is that it's not about having a fearless heart. It's about knowing that with God, you can overcome anything. When fear rises, remind yourself that you don't walk alone. God's strength is made perfect in your weakness, and He will equip you to face whatever lies ahead. Just like David, you can stand firm in the face of fear, knowing that God is fighting for you. But what does this mean for us today? Let's explore how we can take these lessons into our own lives. As you reflect on the wisdom shared in Psalm 27, ask yourself, what would it look like if you fully trusted in God's protection and His promises? What fears might dissolve if you approached every challenge with the confidence that God is by your side? It's time to take action. Trust in God's strength, pray for courage, and walk forward in faith. Your fears don't stand a chance against the power of God's presence. So what are you waiting for? Start today, and let His peace guard your heart and mind. If you want more insights on overcoming fear and living with faith, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Together, we can continue learning how to live a life free from fear, empowered by God's promises.